Sometimes the world doesn't applaud until the story is written. Sometimes the path looks empty, lonely, and even impossible. But it is in that silence where greatness is born. There was no crowd cheering her on, no red carpet rolled out for her arrival. She walked alone. Yet by daring to take steps nobody else was willing to take, she created a ripple that turned into a wave, and that wave changed everything. Walking alone is not weakness. It is proof of strength. It takes a different type of courage to move forward when nobody believes in you, when the voices of doubt are louder than the voices of support. History doesn't remember those who blended in. It remembers the ones who kept walking even when the road was dark. She didn't wait for permission. She didn't wait for approval. She didn't wait for company. She moved with purpose, and the world eventually followed. Think about it, every revolution, every transformation, every breakthrough was started by someone who was willing to walk into the unknown alone. People might laugh at you, they might criticize you, they might call you crazy. But later, those same people will call you visionary. The same footsteps they ignored will become the path they try to walk. Her story teaches us that solitude isn't a punishment, it's preparation. In the quiet, you discover your voice. In the silence, you sharpen your vision. And when the world finally notices, it's too late for them to deny what you've built. She walked alone, but she carried with her faith, persistence, and unshakable determination. And those three things prove stronger than any crowd. Walking alone builds something most people can't even imagine. It builds an inner strength that doesn't need validation. When you walk with a crowd, the noise around you becomes louder than the voice inside you. But when you walk alone, you're forced to hear your own thoughts, forced to face your own fears, forced to answer your own doubts. That's when real growth begins. It's like planting a seed in silence. Nobody sees the roots forming underground. Nobody notices the work happening where the eyes can't reach. But those roots are what hold the tree steady when storms come. People fear solitude because it exposes them. They think being alone means being forgotten. But those who walk their journey without company know that being alone is where you sharpen your discipline. There's a story about a young woman who used to practice running at night, barefoot, down a quiet road. The neighbors laughed. They thought she was wasting her time. She didn't have a coach, didn't have sponsors, didn't have people cheering her on. But she had one thing. They didn't see it, but it lived inside her. She had drive. Years later, she broke records nobody thought she could. That road she used to run alone became the same road where crowds gathered just to see her pass by. That's what solitude does. It trains you when no one's looking, so you can perform when everyone is watching. Strength doesn't come from the applause of others. It comes from the days when you wanted to quit but didn't. It comes from pushing through the silence, through the loneliness, through the doubts that creep into your mind. Imagine a boxer training in the gym when the lights are off. No cameras, no audience, no clapping. Just the sound of gloves hitting the bag and his own breath. That's when champions are built, not in the spotlight, but in the shadows. Walking alone forces you to create your own rhythm, your own momentum, your own standard of excellence. And let's be real, most people don't understand your vision anyway. You can explain it to them 100 times, and they'll still doubt you. Not because you're wrong, but because they can't see as far as you do. They don't have the same lens. They don't feel the same fire. So waiting for them to approve is like waiting for a blind man to describe colors. When you walk alone, you stop asking for directions from people who've never been where you're going. You trust your steps, even if they're shaky, because shaky steps forward are better than standing still with the crowd. Think about the pioneers, the inventors, the leaders. Every one of them had a season of solitude, a time when they looked crazy because nobody else saw what they saw. There's a quote that says, if people don't laugh at your dreams, they're not big enough. And when they laugh, that's the confirmation you're on the right track. Because the world only laughs at what it doesn't understand. But walking alone doesn't just build strength, it builds resilience. Resilience is that muscle that keeps you standing after failure, keeps you fighting after loss, keeps you believing after rejection. Without solitude, resilience can't grow. You have to learn how to talk yourself out of quitting. You have to learn how to remind yourself why you started when the road feels heavy. That's why walking alone is powerful. It forces you to become your own motivator, your own supporter, your own fuel. Now let's connect this to the second truth. True change often comes from those who dare to stand apart. See, blending in has never changed anything. Nobody remembers the ones who followed the crowd. History remembers the ones who stepped away from it. Standing apart is not easy. It's uncomfortable, sometimes even painful, but it's the only way to create real impact. There's a story of a teacher in a small village. Everyone in the community believed education was useless, that children should just work in the fields. But this teacher refused to accept that. She opened a small class under a tree, teaching whoever showed up. Most people ignored her. Some even mocked her. But years later, the very children she taught became leaders, doctors, engineers. That one act of standing apart transformed an entire community. She didn't need a crowd to start. She just needed courage to stand alone. That's the power of standing apart. You break patterns. You challenge traditions. You interrupt cycles that everyone else is too scared to question. And when you do that, you create space for something new to exist. People might resist you at first, but eventually they realize you are the one planting seeds for their future. But let's be real, standing apart comes with battles. It comes with critics. It comes with whispers. It comes with isolation. People won't always celebrate you when you're disrupting comfort zones. Sometimes you'll even lose relationships because of it. But that's the price of transformation. If you want to change everything, you can't move like everyone. You can't think like everyone. You can't live by the same rules that keep them trapped. There's a saying, the nail that sticks out gets hammered. That's exactly what happens when you stand apart. People will try to push you back into place, into silence, into comfort. But if you keep standing, if you keep refusing to bend, you'll show them that a different way is possible. And once you show them, they can never go back to pretending they didn't see it. The world changes when one person is bold enough to take the first step in a different direction. That's why you can never underestimate the power of walking alone. You might think your footsteps are small, but small footsteps repeated with conviction create new roads. Roads that others will one day walk. Look at the story of the writer who published her first book with no support, no money, and endless rejection letters. She could have given up after the first no, but she stood apart from the pattern of quitting. She believed in her words more than the world doubted them. Years later, her books became global bestsellers. Millions read what once nobody wanted. That's the blueprint. Stand apart, and eventually the world catches up. Walking alone builds inner strength, and standing apart sparks change. Put those two together, and you become unstoppable. You no longer need people to hold your hand, because you've learned how to stand on your own. You no longer fear being different, because you've seen the power a difference can bring. And once you carry those lessons, the world can't silence you, because you've already learned how to move in silence. Impact isn't measured by the crowd you carry. It's measured by the legacy you leave behind. Too many people chase numbers, followers, likes, applause, thinking that's what defines success. But numbers fade, crowds shift, attention is temporary. What lasts is the imprint you leave on the people who cross your path, the ones who watched you grind in silence, the ones who were inspired not by what you said, but by how you lived. Think about it. A single candle in a dark room can light the way for everyone inside. That one flame doesn't need an audience to validate it. It just needs to burn. And when it burns with purpose, it becomes a guide for others. Legacy works the same way. It's not about being the loudest in the room. It's about being the one who sparks something that continues long after you're gone. There's a story about a man who worked in a factory his whole life. He wasn't rich. He wasn't famous. He wasn't someone the world would write books about. But every day, he showed up early, worked with integrity, treated people with respect, and gave his best without excuses. Decades later, when he passed away, hundreds of people attended his funeral. People he had quietly impacted through kindness, mentorship, and example. His legacy wasn't built on stages. It was built in everyday moments that stacked up into something powerful. That's the truth about impact. It doesn't always come from being seen. It comes from being remembered. It comes from how you made people feel, what lessons you left behind, what doors you opened for the next person. You don't need a stadium of fans to be great. You just need to plant seeds that continue to grow when you're not around. But let's be honest, the world conditions us to believe louder is better. It wants us to think success is proven by how many people are watching. Yet the strongest people are often the ones who did their best work away from the spotlight. The scientist who stayed up night after night experimenting until she found a cure. The artist who painted every morning for years before the world knew her name. The leader who made unpopular decisions because he knew it would create a better future for his community. None of them started with a crowd. They started with conviction. Legacy is about building something that outlives you. That's why you can't measure impact by the crowd you carry. Crowds leave when the show is over. Legacy stays when the music stops. It's like a quote I once heard, you die twice. Once when you stop breathing, and once when your name is spoken for the last time. The goal isn't just to live, it's to create something worth remembering. And here's the thing, sometimes your legacy won't be recognized in your lifetime. That doesn't mean it's not real. There are inventors who died poor only for the world to later discover their brilliance. There are writers who were ignored while alive, but their words became classics after their death. That's the beauty of legacy. It doesn't need instant validation. It just needs authenticity. If it's real, it will last. Now let's move to another truth. Silence, courage, and persistence speak louder than words. We live in a time where everybody wants to talk, but very few want to act. People announce their dreams before they even take the first step. They crave recognition before they've earned results. But silence is a weapon. When you move quietly, you protect your vision. You give yourself room to build without interference. You let your work speak when it's ready. There's a short story about a builder who never told anyone what he was creating. Day after day, he carried bricks in silence, stacking them carefully. Neighbors mocked him, asking why he worked so hard on something they couldn't even see. Years later, a massive structure stood tall, unshackable, admired by everyone. The same people who doubted him now took pride in what he built. That's the essence of silence. It confuses doubters and amplifies results. Courage ties into that silence. Walking in silence doesn't mean you're scared to speak. It means you're strong enough to let your actions carry the message. Courage is not the absence of fear. It's moving forward in spite of it. Courage is standing alone in a room where nobody agrees with you, but you stand anyway because you believe in your vision. Courage is risking being misunderstood today so you can be remembered tomorrow, and persistence is what binds it all together. Persistence is the discipline of showing up every single day, even when the results don't show yet. It's the athlete who practices thousands of hours before one championship game. It's the entrepreneur who faces failure after failure but keeps reinventing until something clicks. Persistence doesn't shout, it doesn't brag, it doesn't need attention. It just keeps moving brick by brick, step by step. The combination of silence, courage, and persistence creates something unstoppable. You don't need to scream about your goals when your consistency shows them. You don't need to defend your vision when your results prove it. You don't need to fight for attention when your legacy naturally commands it. Think of a river cutting through rock. It doesn't do it with noise or force. It does it with persistence. Drop by drop, over time, the river carves paths through mountains. That's the power of persistence. It wins battles that strength and speed alone can't. Pair that with silence and you protect yourself from unnecessary distractions. Add courage and you walk into places fear tells you to avoid. Together they become louder than any speech you could ever give. And the truth is, people respect results more than words. You can talk all day about what you're going to do, but once you actually do it, the conversation changes. The doubters stop talking, the critics go quiet, and the supporters get louder. That's why silence, courage, and persistence are timeless tools. They never fail. They never go out of style. They never lose power. So the lesson is clear. Don't chase crowds, chase legacy. Don't chase applause, chase results. Protect your dreams in silence, fuel them with courage, and grow them with persistence. Because at the end of the day, the world doesn't remember who made the most noise. It remembers who made the most difference. So when you find yourself walking alone, don't question the journey. Don't think your steps are wasted. Remember, the world doesn't change because of the noise of the majority. It changes because of the persistence of the few, or sometimes because of the courage of one. She walked alone, and because of that, the world was never the same again.